We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder.
Paul Robeson once said to me, he said, Harry, get them to sing your song, meaning the world, people. Get them to sing your song, and they will want to know who you are. And if they want to know who you are, you have now been given the first opportunity to give them instruction that might illuminate and give them some choices that they may never had before.
But I think that we have all been fortunate to have had this man walk the earth among us. In him, we have had a vision, really, of how beautiful the human race can become. He is a man, as I see it, of the future.
And higher, we're soldiers of the cross.
Robeson stood out as a warrior for peace and solidarity for people from China, India, and other developing countries and oppressed peoples. He upheld the fighting spirit against racism, colonialism, and Western supremacy. Indeed, in the world of uncertainty, as we witness today, we need to unite together for certainty and unite together against force of aggression and hegemony, keeping with the spirit of Paul Robeson.
Wherever he went in the country, I don't care what country he was in, he found himself among the artists. He found himself among the people who sang songs or sang chants. He constantly wanted to know what everything meant. He wanted to know where it all came from. He would go to Czechoslovakia, or he'd go to the Soviet Union, or he'd go to England, or whatever, and he would hear a song. And he would immediately translate that song to something that had to do with a tribe in Africa. Or hear a melody somewhere in Africa, and he would remember that he heard it being sung by the Welsh miners. Then he'd want to know how the hell did it all get there. Did the sailors bring it? Was it just a coincidence? What has been going on in this byway of life? And he sang in almost every language. He spoke many languages, but phonetically, those languages he didn't speak, he was able to learn phonetically and learn them meticulously. He was conscious about the highest form of the art, and he didn't want to be just an American singing a song of someone in another country. He wanted to get the nuances. He wanted to get the absolute. He wanted the people, when they heard him sing it, for them to assume that he came from that part of Ireland, that part of Wales, that part of Germany.
To the songs of many peoples of the world, songs that I find very similar to my own, incidentally. All the folk music of the world might interest you very, are very similar in one respect. Not only because peoples have the same aspirations and feeling scales. One scale of our music, which is predominant, is a so-called five-tone scale, sort of a big word for it, pentatonic. It can be played on the five black keys of the piano, which form a natural five-tone scale. And, for example, two groups of songs, mostly in this scale, and very similar to my own, other songs are Chinese folk songs and Scotch Hebridean folk songs.
I think his interest in folk song is the fact that he had a great love for human beings and for humanity, I would say. Therefore, he wanted to sing the songs of the folk, the ordinary person, perhaps the peasant, even the downtrodden.
The study of the Negro spiritual has now characterizes my programs, which most of the critics have characterized as a program showing the unity, the relation of Negro music to all the music of the world. So the idea of my concert is one suggestion that all men are brothers because of their music. And in my first group, I do an old English song. I do an old song from about the 11th or 12th century from Czechoslovakia. The Moravian chorales of about the 11th and 12th centuries preceded the chorales upon which Johann Sebastian Bach based his music. So I take this, and then I do a Bach chorale, and then I create a slight confusion by doing a Negro spiritual right in the middle, because it belongs there. And I found that out by going back to Africa. For example, there was an old, in East Africa, there is a chorale form that reached a form just pre-Bach in Europe. Very interesting. Jabala Jabata Jabala Bata Jabala Bata Bata Jabala Bata Mzungu Mzungu Wachine Mzungu Mzungu Wachine Svati Vatsklavе Vivedo Cheski Zemlje. The first was African, almost, and you say they're very similar. The first was African. The second is from the 11th century in Czechoslovakia with a chorale that just preceded Bach.
Remember, Robeson's parents were slaves. They escaped slavery and escaped to New Jersey. New Jersey was a place that had a lot of stations on the Underground Railroad. Actually, Paul was the third black student at Rutgers University. Rutgers is still a racist joint. But Paul was the third black to go there. He was a football player, basketball player, baseball player. When he first tried out for the football team, they broke his wrist. They put him in such a state that he couldn't play for the first month or so. He got so bad he wanted to quit. His father told him he better not quit. And so Paul Robeson became the first and only All-American at Rutgers, football player. He was a Phi Beta Kappa. He finished as the valedictorian of his class. That's why we call him the tallest of trees. But when Paul got out of Rutgers, he wanted to be a lawyer. And that credo, it's interesting that he and Du Bois had a similar kind of credo. With Paul, it was, I know that I have to help my less fortunate brothers. We are a less fortunate race. And it is my task to help raise our people. But remember, Paul Robeson came out of college and into the big world during the Harlem Renaissance, when people like W.E.B. Du Bois had set the tone. When people like Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, and Duke Ellington. Robeson said, the artist has to make his choice. Either fight for freedom or fight for slavery. There is no neutral idea. An artist is political. Even if they say they're not political, they're political. You understand that? Even if you say you're not political, that's a political stance. Because you are taking one philosophy, and whatever you do is pushing that philosophy. So Robeson went out on the limb from the beginning to say, I take my stand. Remember, Paul Robeson was the first concert artist to actually do a program of black sorrow songs, the spirituals. He was the one that made the sorrow songs, brought them in to the 20th century, and gave them a stature throughout the world. That was Paul Robeson who did that.
And my father was in that tradition. Every Sunday morning, it would be a rolling out of a great sermon, and now we bow down on bended knee, oh Lord. And it became like an opera.
What Paul did very consciously was to go into that world of black life, black art, extract from it those songs that he felt most comfortable with, and he felt were the ones that most demonstrated our history, our struggle, and our dignity as a people.
I explained the spirituals, that these were not songs of defeat, that they had come out of the struggles of the Negro people, that these were songs that aided the Negro people in their struggle.
Oscar Hammerstein and Jerome Kern wrote a song expressly for and dedicated to a young singer. No one who has ever heard Paul Robeson sing Old Man River will ever forget it.
I get weary and sick of crying.
Old Man River was to be associated with Robeson for the rest of his life. The words he sang were to change gradually. as Paul Robeson and the world around him changed.
Keep rolling on. There's an old man called the Mississippi. That's the old man I don't like to be. What does he care if the world's got troubles? What does he care if the land ain't free? But I keeps laughing instead of crying. I must keep fighting until I'm dying. And old man River, he'll just keep rolling on.
In 1943, he opened on Broadway in Othello, the first time a black man would play Shakespeare's Moor on Broadway.
That to me, Othello is one of a different culture. Shakespeare insists that he's African. Some argue whether the word black and the fact that he's from Africa is very clear to me. And that Shakespeare posed this problem of a, say, black man in a white society. This is an extremely important point, too. As Othello says, that he kills not in hate, but in honor. So it wasn't just the act of infidelity. It was the destruction of himself as a human being, of his human dignity. And may I add, in thinking of the part myself, that I related that dignity not to myself personally, say, in a modern society, but to my whole people, important in Othello's defense of what he calls his honor and his dignity.
The Robeson legend was growing, and so was his concert itinerary. He visited and performed on 3 continents, traveled extensively with his wife and their son, Paul Jr. Eslanda, an anthropologist, had scholarly interests that meshed perfectly with her husband. They were both about the mutuality of mankind.
Say the Africans and the American Negroes have turned out to be an extraordinarily gifted people. Just like a Scottish American is proud of being from Scotland, I'm proud for being African. Now, in our school books, they tried to tell me that all Africans were savages, till I got to London and found most of the Africans I knew were going to Oxford and Cambridge and doing very well, and learned their culture. And even once somebody had the temerity, after one had conquered the Chinese people and imposed upon them the opium trade and everything else, to suggest that they were a backward people, just the people who had been civilized so long over the rest of you folks didn't make any sense at all. So somewhere it was wonderful to find about the colored peoples of the world that they were very advanced. So I would say today that I'm an American who is infinitely prouder to be of African descent, no question about it. No question about it. I'm an Afro-American, and I don't use the word American ever loosely again.
The mantle of fame had an unusual effect on Paul Robeson. He gravitated more and more to the working class of people. His songs were of them and for them. By 1937, he was booking most of his concerts with ticket prices that the poor could afford.
I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night.
I've had a chance to meet human beings, to know them face to face, man to man. This is a unity, a complete unity of a kind between the Negro people and between the working classes of America and myself. So there's no longer this division.
As Robeson developed as an artist, so did he develop as a human. He resolved to lend himself to the cause of oppressed people wherever they were, whatever color they were. In the late 30s, as fascism started its bloody sweep across Europe, Robeson supported the loyalist forces in Spain, who were fighting almost single-handed against fascist German tyranny. It was January 27, 1938, at Teruel, Spain. Robeson had come to the front to sing to the Republican soldiers. Somehow, the shooting quieted down. Loudspeakers were put up, and for a day, a war stopped while 2 opposing armies listened to a man sing.
Although Paul Robeson never visited China, the Chinese people have a good memory of him from the moment he sang the song March On of Volunteers for an audience of 7,000 at an open concert held in New York City in the year 1940, when fierce battles raging on in China against invading Japanese army, which had then already occupied northern China and eastern China. Paul Robeson said, "I want to finish this concert with the Chinese song, March On, a song for the struggling Chinese people."
Arise, you who refuse to be bond slaves. Let's stand up and fight for liberty and true democracy. All our world is facing the chains of the tyrant. Everyone who works for freedom is now crying, arise, arise, arise. All of us with one heart, with the torch of freedom, march on, with the torch of freedom, march on, march on, march on and on. Till I不愿做奴隶的人们，把我们的血肉组成我们新的长城。中华民族到了最危险的时候，每个人被迫着发出最好的号声，起来，起来，起来！我们望着一心，冒着地上的炮火前进，冒着地上的炮火前进，前进，前进，进。
Back in America, the tensions were building as World War II was about to erupt. It was Paul Robeson who found a song that seemed to provide the unifying force that America needed at the time. It was called Ballad for Americans.
What's your name, buddy? Where are you going? Who are you?
Are you an American?
Am I an American? I'm just an Irish, Negro, Jewish, Italian, French and English, Spanish, Russian, Chinese, Polish, Scotch, Hungarian, Litvak, Swedish, Finnish, Canadian, Greek and Turk and Czech and double Czech American.
With the outbreak of World War II, Robeson threw his full energies into the war effort. He gave endless free concerts to raise American war bonds. He toured for the USO. He loudly stated and deeply believed that if blacks helped to defeat fascism, America would end racism and give the black man his due.
But those of us who were involved in the Second World War, some of us really felt that if we were to participate fully and to give of ourselves in this struggle against fascism, that when we came back, part of the conquering armies, the victorious horde, that we would, as a group, as blacks, be looked upon by the larger society with infinitely different eyes, with greater compassion, with greater care, with a greater sense of warmth and camaraderie. That we would begin to participate fully in all that the United States had to offer, the American way of life, quote unquote, had to offer. Now, most of us returned to an excruciatingly cruel experience. There was an intense reaction by the white community in this country, particularly in the South. They gouged out the eyes of a war hero by the name of Isaac Woodard. There was a campaign of lynching and shooting and murder.
On September 23, 1946, thousands of black and white Americans met at the steps of the Lincoln Monument in Washington as members of a 100-day American crusade to end lynching, co-chaired by Paul Robeson and Albert Einstein. President Truman received a delegation from that crusade in his White House Oval Office. Robeson led that delegation and read a petition asking that Truman include in his next message to Congress a recommendation for the passage of federal anti-lynching legislation. Truman refused, and Robeson told him flatly that if the United States government didn't stop lynching, black people would. Robeson also stepped up his criticism of America's involvement in Africa. As chairman of the Council on African Affairs that he founded in 1937, he called for support of African independence and rallied behind a strike by South African gold miners. He raised a hue and cry against the economic rape of Africa by Western powers.
Nigerians want their independence. East Africans want their land. South Africa lives in frustrated anger. The West Indies wants federation for the interests of the West Indian people, not for the interests of outside imperialisms. The people of these lands know from bitter experience what private investment for their good means. They remember the days of Leopold, of 15 of 30 million Africans wasted in rubber. They have the record of Firestone in Liberia, of Phelps Stokes copper interests in South Africa, oil, cocoa, sugar interests. Never surrendering until made to do so, the imperialists concoct a so-called old new program to not so subtly enslave once and for all Southeast Asia, Africa, Latin America, the West Indies. But they overlook the terrific tensions and the awakening of the colonial peoples. Again, the answer will and must be no. The big cartel boys won't be saved this way either.
There was mass unemployment in those days. Factories were closed. The bulk of my people forced into deeper and deeper poverty, greater unemployment. You could not vote. The Republican and Democratic parties were lily white to the extreme and took no practical steps whatsoever to put an end to this type of Jim Crow, segregation and discrimination, which was the lot of my people. To see the Communist Party act as it did, calling for protest action, arguing that we couldn't win in the fight, drew me to the Communist Party.
I have spoken many times about my first trip to the Soviet Union in 1934. For the first time, as I stepped on Soviet soil, I felt myself a full human being. A full human being.
Have you come back from Moscow still a convinced communist?
I don't see how you can ask me that. How do you know I'm a communist? Nobody else knows. So I resent the question.
I beg
will
your pardon?
you rephrase it, please? Yes.
What are your political opinions? Have they been changed at all?
My political opinions about the Soviet Union have only been deepened. As I said in the Soviet Union, I'm a believer in socialism, and I would say with Dr. Du Bois that I believe that the socialist lands, in the sense of the Soviet Union, China, and the people's democracies, are the hope. Can I repeat it? The hope of the future.
His friendship with Russia and his oft-expressed admiration for many aspects of socialism, as well as his close friendship with New York City Councilman Benjamin J. Davis of the Communist Party, all served to make the very mention of Robeson's name in some circles cause for argument. But Robeson would not bend. He maintained his Soviet ties publicly. He knew that his highly lucrative artistic career was in jeopardy now, and that he would be vilified. It was on this moral bedrock that he would take his stand. Never compromise your principles, no matter what. Never take low. Paul Robeson toured overseas on a heavy concert schedule, and true to form, he refused to avoid going to Russia. During that tour, he went to Paris to participate in the World Peace Congress, better known as the Paris Peace Conference. It was attended by delegates from 60 countries, including artist Pablo Picasso and W.E.B. Du Bois. Robeson delivered a short, unprepared speech that intensified his troubles back in America when it was reported. Dr. Du Bois recalled the most explosive part of that speech.
I went to Paris to attend the great Paris Peace Congress, which was, I think, on the whole, the greatest meeting of human beings I ever attended. It was a magnificent meeting. I took part and especially talked about
colonies and emancipating colonies. Paul Robeson flew from Prague and took part and said that he didn't believe that colored men would ever join in any war against Russia.
I'm an anti-fascist, and I would feel, perhaps, that any war against the Soviet Union would be a fascist war.
He had a huge impact on the peace movement because he was seen not only as a great socialist, but as somebody campaigning against the Cold War. And he supported the anti-colonial movement, so he became a very important part of a whole post-war movement.
Time is running short, and our voices must be heard all over this land and all over the entire earth. The powerful ones will listen if we cry still louder, if we work perseveringly to persuade the millions who stand ready to join in the demand for an end to this nuclear bomb nonsense and the completely suicidal gyrations of a few gentlemen who fail to recognize that a new world has already been born and will never turn back.
I say today that the greatest patriotism, the greatest evidence of loyalty is the loyalty to peace and to the future of our children, not to their destruction. And so that is the essence, I might say to many friends, the essence of the Stalin Prize. And it was given by an international jury in the name of Stalin, in the name of peace. You know, it gets to be pretty rough when Senator Nolan from California gets up and says, one of the great tests of peace will be whether there are free elections in Korea. And it came to me very fast. It would seem to me one of the great tests of peace of American democracy would be some free elections in Alabama, Tennessee, Mississippi. It means much to us in America, much to the Americans struggling for peace in the Northwest. Some of the finest people in the world under pressure today, facing jail, facing hostile courts, for the simple fact that they are struggling for peace, struggling for a decent America where all of us who have helped build that land can live in decency and in goodwill. So it's very important that we are gathered here today, that our government can understand that artists, not only myself, there are so many of us, so many scientists like Dr. Du Bois, one of the greatest Americans who ever lived, proudly a son of the Negro people, but one who has contributed to the advance of all mankind. And the idea that Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois cannot leave this country to attend peace meetings, to attend scientific gatherings all over the earth. I have seen the people. I have learned their languages. I sing their songs. And I go about America, wherever I may go, seeking a simple thing. It seems so simple that all people should live in full human dignity and in friendship. But somewhere the enemy has always been around, who tries to push back the great mass of the people in every land. We know that. I choose to stretch out my hands across the ocean to brave peoples of many lands, across the border to Latin America, to Neruda in Chile, to the brave people of Cuba and Mexico, across the ocean to the lands of Asia, and I stretch my hands to the people of the new China as they build a new life for 500 million people. I stretch my hand across the continent to shake the hands of the brave Soviet people and of the new people's democracy. That is my right as an American. I shall continue to fight as I see the truth, that I'll continue this year fighting for peace, however difficult it may be. And I want everybody in the range of my voice to hear, official or otherwise, that there's no force on earth that will make me go backward 1,000th part of 1 little inch.
It became the concerted effort of the reactionary forces in this country to stay that, to not only mute it, but to turn it back as strongly as possible. Nothing Russian was acceptable. And this wave, the wave of reactionaryism began to build and build and build, and communism became clearly the target. And anyone who spoke about integration, anyone who spoke about labor, anybody who spoke about pulling together, anybody who spoke about anything that said that there is the Jeffersonian concept is a beautiful concept. Let's try to pull it. Let's fill it. Let's fulfill that mandate. Became a clear target for reactionaries. And they set up many instruments with which to do this. The most important, the most powerful is HUAC.
Are you now a member of the Communist Party?
Oh, please, please. The reason I'm here today, from the mouth of the State Department itself, is I should not be allowed to travel because I have struggled for the independence of the colonial peoples of Africa. The other reason I'm here today, again, from the State Department and from the record of the Court of Appeals, is that when I am abroad, I speak out against injustices against the Negro people in this land. That is why I'm here. I'm not being tried for whether I'm a communist. I'm being tried for fighting for the rights of my people.
Why do you not stay in Russia?
Because my father was a slave, and my people died to build this country. And I'm going to stay here and have a part of it just like you, and no fascist-minded people will drive me from it. Is that clear?
You are here because you are promoting the communist cause.
I am here because I'm opposing the neo-fascist cause, which I see arising in these committees.
Am I a communist? The Communist Party, Senator Ferguson, is a legal party. I have as much right to be a member of the Communist Party as I have to be of the Republican or the Democratic Party. But in protecting the civil rights of all Americans, it's none of your business. It's about time that we here in America caught on. We chiefly are being hurt. We are the only ones hysterical, and the more hysterical we get, the more freedoms we lose. This can't happen if we fight hard every minute for our liberties and our freedoms to act. And today, fighting for our liberties means, first of all, fighting for the liberties of the 12 communist leaders who are on trial for their devotion to the Negro people.
In the federal court in New York, trial begins for 11 of the 12 communist leaders who are charged with a conspiracy to teach and advocate the forcible overthrow of the U.S. government.
We were convicted, all of us. I was given an 8-year sentence. Which means that you actually serve 6 years in prison and 2 years on parole. I think it can be said that throughout my prison term, the FBI was on top of my case and can be held responsible for what happened to me in prison. My dizziness, and only given at that time some kind of tablets which you are given for seasickness, and no serious study of my problem. I need not be blind today had there been a serious approach to this problem.
Imagine, somewhere somebody says, I, born a Negro, that because of my beliefs, my fight for peace, my fight for friendship between nations, my fight for the complete liberation of my people, that somewhere I'm not an American and that I should be cut off from the very people from whom I was born.
His own people, for whom he had fought so hard and long and had sacrificed so much for, came to his defense. He had a platform now, and he had an audience.
I've had a very tremendous success at home. Do a great deal to support, which would interest you, from the Negro people. In the Negro churches, I had chances to sing. And my whole career has been reestablished in America by way of the Negro churches. Very interesting.
He used to come to see me. I remember one time in the midst of his troubles, you know, the troubles that he was having with the government and denial of opportunity to pursue his livelihood. He'd just been at a meeting. There was a meeting on 125th Street, and I was appearing at the Apollo at the time. And I was in the audience, you know, to listen to him speak. And I went back to the theater, and then I got a telegram a little later saying that he was in the show. He went and caught the performance, but he didn't come backstage because he didn't want to subject me to any kind of a harassment or anything. I call him up and I say, if I got to be harassed by your presence, I'll take it. That'll be my cross to bear. Let me bear my own cross. Yes, because he was really something special.
The final blow came from the U.S. State Department. His passport was revoked.
Not only was I not allowed to go out, but I was also prevented from actually appearing in my own land. Concert halls were denied to me for many years. I was refused theaters. I have never been on American television, for example. That is, I've been blacklisted, as have many of my colleagues in America for whatever reason. As you saw the other day, Arthur Miller was in difficulty. But in many of our cases, it meant that we couldn't even. So I have been able to practice my craft there. So I would say, no, you can't. I do not regret in any sense what I have done. I had some of my friends feel I could have done things in other ways. One has to do them as one sees life. I regret. I can't even use the term regret. I'm very proud, in one sense, of any contribution I've been able to make to the struggles of my people. So if you want freedom, you have to suffer sometimes.
One of the happy days of that period was when we flew from here to the state of Washington, to a place called Peace Arch Park. It's on the border with Canada. We had about 25, 50 people on our side and tens of thousands of Canadians on the other side of the border. I don't think that ever happened in history before, that a concert was sung by a man in one country physically while his audience was in another country.
Did my Lord deliver? Daniel delivered, Daniel delivered, Daniel. Did my Lord deliver? Daniel, and why not every man? He delivered Daniel from the lion's den, Jonah from the belly of the whale, and the Hebrew children from the fiery furnace, and why not every man? Did my Lord deliver? Daniel delivered, Daniel delivered, Daniel. Did my Lord deliver? Daniel, and why not every man? The moon runs down in a purple stream, the sun refused to shine. Every star did disappear, yes, freedom shall be mine. Did my Lord deliver? Daniel delivered, Daniel delivered, Daniel. Did my Lord deliver? Daniel, and why not every man?
Finally, the U.S. State Department was forced to yield to the crush of protests from around the world, as well as from the U.S. Supreme Court ruling. In July of 1958, Robeson's passport was returned after 8 long years.
Most importantly, however, were the questions raised by the State Department as to my political opinion. Here's a question of whether one who wants to sing and act can have, as a citizen, political opinion. And in attacking me, they suggested that when I was abroad, I spoke out against injustices to the Negro people in the United States. I certainly did. And the Supreme Court Justice just ruled, Judge Warren, in the segregation cases, that world opinion had a lot to do with that ruling, that our children, Negro children, can go to school like anybody else in the South. I'm very proud to have been a part of directing world opinion to precisely that condition. The second, that I fight for the independence of the colonial peoples of Africa. Bandung, the colored peoples of the world assembled and made it clear that nobody is going to tell them what to do. They're going to have the independence. I'm proud of that. The third, that I fight for peace and friendship with the Soviet Union. At Geneva, the President of the United States made it clear that nobody wants to go to war with the Soviet Union. No Americans want to fight them. And I presume certainly the Negro people of the United States don't want any war with them either. Nobody does, because we want peace and friendship in the world. And rather absurd that the Soviet farmers can be here in the United States, that Baptist preachers can be in Moscow and farmers, and that I'm not allowed to travel because of my friendship, open spoken friendship, that's right, for the Soviet people and for the peoples of all the world. And I want to be able very soon, I hope, to pursue my career as a singer and as an actor. Still have a pretty good voice rolling around, they tell me yet. What a boy, where are you hiding?
Almost immediately, he was off on a triumphant world concert tour. It was a spectacular tour spanning England, Wales, France, and Russia. It was a standing-room-only affair wherever he went. The gentle warrior, the man of unbending principle, had returned.
I would say that unquestionably, I am an American, born there. My father slaved there. Upon the backs of my people was developed the primary wealth of America. So in America, so there's a lot of America that belongs to me yet, you understand? The great tragedy is that by not making us full-class citizens as yet in America, they may be losing, I don't know how much yet.
I am today giving up my concerts for 2 or 3 years to enter into this struggle at a very, what I call getting into the rank and file struggle of my people for full citizenship in these United States. So I won't be singing, except for the rights of my people for the next couple of years. No pretty songs, John. No pretty songs.
Paul Robeson inspired many youth on the college campuses and youth in the towns. And he did this by saying, I speak to you in the South because this is where the struggle must take place. And of course, this was prophetic.
What is your reaction to the passive resistance as practiced in Montgomery?
I think there was a magnificent movement, and nobody can, I say, there's nothing, as far as the general thing of a nonviolent solution of the problem. This is there could be no other solution within our, within the frame of things today. I mean, this is a very important contribution. Nobody could think of a violent solution unless somebody wanted to ask somebody to be destroyed. I mean, that would be absurd.
I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
It's very simple to measure King's effect on the movement because almost every major city in the United States rioted on his death. We recognized that here was a man who understood that the nature of the civil rights movement was changing. He did not die in an effort to get something for black people. He died organizing sanitation workers. He had moved to see that the future of black people was connected with the future of the trade union movement, which was to say blacks, whites, Catholics, Protestants, Jews, and all people have to be together to break the hold of the super capitalists on our society to make it possible for the poor to have opportunity. Oh, he was moving in such a creative direction. Now, therefore, the death of Malcolm X, the death of King, and the destruction of the personality of Robeson were all of a piece. They were tragedies which meant that at the point of their highest leadership and greatest insight, they were cut down.
You're murderers. You never wanted us to have no strong black leaders. Every time God gave us a head, you chopped it off. You at Fisk, W.E.B. Du Bois was a giant. That man was a great giant. But that man could not die in America. He died in Ghana. And in Ghana today, they have a memorial to W.E.B. Du Bois, but there's no memorial in America for the man that taught us so much. Do you remember Paul Robeson? Not only a brilliant singer, but a brilliant mind. We lost him after the press made us think he was a no-good communist. We turned on him, and he died in Philadelphia 15 years ago, a recluse, broken in spirit. Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. was all right as long as he taught black people to be nonviolent in the face of white violence. As long as we suffered peacefully while white folk were beating the hell out of us. Dr. King is a beautiful man. He deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. But when Dr. King took nonviolence to the international level and saw something grossly wrong in the war in Vietnam and began speaking against that war, he paid with his life. Malcolm X didn't die from some crazy black Muslims. Malcolm X is dead because the government wanted to split Malcolm from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Our great leaders have died.
In 1965, tragedy struck. His wife, Islanda, passed away. That same year, Robeson was forced into retirement. His health had begun to fail.
It was to our great, great benefit. It was to our great reward that we should have had in our midst men like Paul Robeson, men like Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, who emerged to give us instruction, to give us the value of profound thought, to give us incisive political analysis, to help guide our energies from an act of violence to a place of strategy, to a place of cunning, and set the stage for what was to be the rest of the 20th century. And if it had not been for Paul Robeson, had it not been for Dr. Du Bois and others who gave us keen instruction, who put their lives on the line, who stood strong in the midst of tremendous opposition, we would not have been the beneficiaries of what turned out to be the guiding factors of our life. And others who rose up not too long thereafter, Malcolm X, Dr. King, Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker, on and on and on, all those people were the benefactors of this stunning moment in human history. I dare say that I found my center as a human being. I found my center and I found my purpose for how I was to use my life. And the greatest example for me was, in fact, the man who chose to mentor me, who found me very early in life and began to give me instruction that made me feel a part of the world in which he lived, and by his intellect and his strength and his courage set my course, and that was Paul Robeson. The last days of Paul Robeson's life was in his humble dwellings in Philadelphia, and I sat with Paul and I looked at him. His spirit was strong, his voice was strong, his soul was strong, his body was weak. And I said to him, Paul, you have given so much. You could have been anything you wanted to be. You had money, you had fame, you had power, You spoke all the major languages of the world, literally spoke them, read them, and could write them. 14 of them, including Swahili and Zulu. And I said to him, was it worth it? And the words you used just now, Danny, the journey, he said, absolutely. Weep not for me. He said, we may not have gotten all the victories we wanted, but more important than the victories we have acquired and attained was the journey itself. The men and women whom I have met along the way have forever made my life a life of great value, and I would change absolutely nothing.
But Du Bois, the good doctor, and the giant Paul Robeson, this pair of revolutionary figures, were slandered and red-baited by imperialism which they hated. They put Paul under house arrest. He was even forbidden to sing. Du Bois they dragged into their phony court, where McCarthyism got its first ass whipping. Of course, united in struggle, the people fought. From Du Bois and Paul, we got the world and all, history and Africa, the South and struggle, politics and art, militancy and creativity, scholarship and revolution, the only solution. They were heroes to the world's people of all nationalities, but they were red and they were black. I still live, said the doctor, even under the beast's attack. The artists must fight for freedom of slavery, Paul chorused, at the coal mines, the docks, the factories, the international conferences on peace, and I have made my choice to fight for freedom. And that's why these revolutionaries still give us strength every day. That's why the fools and racists can't make them fade away. Two great beings of fire and light, two great figures who can make day out of night. And the huge constellation called Paul Robeson has returned once again. His century of revolutionary struggle will guide without end Paul the artist, Paul the actor, Paul the scholar, Paul the fighter, all combined, so he was the tallest of men. Yet we are still in this world of fake humans and real dogs. A world like a bloody pig pen whose rulers are hogs. Finance capital, U.S. imperialism, national oppression and the racist disease, and liberal pipsqueaks who trick us by killing only after they say please. Still, we will win. We win. Never doubt it. I'll say it again. We're going to win. Never doubt it. We will win. My comrades, even science says we'll win. And who have the butchers got like the good Dr. Almighty Paul, who even under ceaseless attack resisted and struggled and demanded we all fight back. These dogs, Paul thought, have nothing unless it's bought. No science but murder. No church except money. No law except robbery. No literature except lies. No art but disguise. Even in the Bible, Revelation described our enemies metaphorically but well. This beast that rose smoking from the western sea. Triple sick imperialism, the superpower from hell. Read on. They trick, they whisper, they destroy, and they smell. And the ancients before them knew the science of name. Call on the ancestor, and the spirit also came. So we call on the doctor, Dr. Du Bois, come back, come on back. We call on Mighty Robeson, hey Paul Robeson, we need them. We need them both to blunt the beast's attack. Hey Dr. Du Bois, hey Paul Robeson, hey Paul. Be with us now as we start to fight back. Dr. Du Bois, hey Paul Robeson, we need you, come back. They're with us here now. At the head of our thrust, a revolutionary legacy, revolutionary tradition, revolutionary trust. Okay, they say. Now, let us move forward. Thank you.
Far, just close by, through an open door. Work all done, a care laid by, going to fear no more. Mothers that expecting me the folk had gathered then, all the friends I knew. All the friends I knew. Home, home.